All right, now that we have seen how to set up navigation for pages that we can move between from the main window specifically, so the pages are inside of our main window and we basically are just navigating through the UI elements that we have here at the top, let's look at how we can actually set up a UI element inside of a page that will send us to another page. Because so far we can only move between pages here from our navigation bar, right? But let's say we wanted to do the same thing, not from here, but actually from a page. Okay, so here we have this button, go to page 1, which will now allow us to move to page 1. But because this button here, or this UI, this page, is not directly in the main window, we need to look at how we can actually set it up so that we can move to page 1. Because this page 1 button, we need to send this event to the right executor, so to the right UI element that will actually consume the event. Therefore, let's go over to page 3 and let's change the text of this button, because this button will now say go to page 1, for example. Okay, and it needs a click event. So let's add one here, click, and let's create a new event handler. It will just be called button click, which is fine. And now in the code behind, we can actually implement this. Okay, so what is it that we want to implement here? Well, we want to move from one page to another, but we cannot just say, hey, main window frame, because it doesn't exist in this context. The page doesn't have access to the main window frame. And what you need to do for this is to create an event and a delegate. Okay, so here, let me actually create it real quick. We will need to create a delegate, which will return void, and on go to page 1 button click is going to be the name that I give it. And then we need to follow the same structure that an event would have, such a button click. You see the sender as an object, and then the rooted event args that we need to pass as well. And I'm going to call them E. Okay, so we are not implementing this delegate functionality that will be executed. That's not how you do it, but we're just setting up the delegate. And now we create an event, public event, that will return an on go to page button click delegate, and will be called go to page 1 button click. Okay, so that's going to be the event that we can now call inside of our button click event. So let's use it. And here we pass the sender as well as the rooted event args, like so. This will now send the event, and we now need to go ahead and consume this event. So let's make sure that our main window is actually listening to this event. So it's subscribed to the event and it just waits for it to happen, because it will be triggered in our page 3 once we click on the button, but it will only be executed finally inside of the main window XAML, because the main window is the one that does the navigation, because it contains the frame. So we need to make sure that the event is consumed in here. Therefore, we have the third page. We need to set that up. And now we can actually execute the events that we have in main window XAML and assign them to the event that we just set up here. So assign it to this go to page button click event. Okay, so here I'm going to use third page dot go to page button 1 click, and I'm going to add the button click 1 event. So I'm going to say basically that if you execute this go to page button 1 click, which will be executed once we click on the button inside of our page 3, then this go to page button 1 click event will be triggered. And this page button 1 click can be assigned multiple events, but we're going to assign it this button click 1 event that we created here, which will then execute this code, which will basically set the first page as the content. And this will now allow us to move to page 1 from page 3. Okay, so Let's go to page 3. Let's now go to page 1, and you can see it works flawlessly. What I would like you to do as a little challenge is to change this button, or actually add another button. So we have 2 buttons on page 2. So one of the buttons will send us to page 1, and the second button will send us to page 3. Okay, so please set that up, set up the code for this to happen. Okay, so I hope you tried it. Therefore, let's go over to page 2 here, and we need to have a second button. This one will say go to page 1, and the other one will say go to page 3. Okay, and they all need an event. So here a click event. So let's create a new event handler for this. This one will also need a click event, and let's create an event handler for this one as well. Actually, button click, let's call this one button click page 1, and this one button click page 2. Accordingly, of course, in our code behind, we have to be careful that we call those methods exactly the same. Okay, we have page 1 and page 2. Okay, so that we can understand a little better what those pages do. Okay, and now, of course, we also need to make sure that we set up the delegates. Okay, so we can get inspired by what we have here. Okay, so we need to set up the same delegates. One will be to go to page 1, and the other one will be to go to page 3. Okay, so I'm going to create the 2 delegates as well as the 2 events here. And now accordingly, I need to call them. Okay, so you can just get inspired by here. Go to page 1 button click will be called once you want to go to page 1, and the other one once you go to page 2. So if we want to go to page 1, it will be this one. We are going to send the sender over and the rooted event arcs, or pass them. And if we want to go to page, actually this should be page 3. If we want to go to page 3, we're going to set the sender and E. Now I called this page 3, so I need to really be careful here that I actually call this page 3 as well. Okay, so this is something that you have to be very careful with, because if you change the name here, actually refactoring will do the trick as well, renaming it. But if you change it here and you don't change it in the code behind, your application will crash. You can just test it, you will see it straight away. Okay, so now we have these 2 buttons, and let's actually add a label here. Go to another page in between. That will basically make a little space between the 2 buttons. We're not designing here, we're not making it pretty in this example. It's really just about the navigation. Okay, and these were the steps that you needed to set up in the page. Okay, and now of course in our main window example, we need to make sure that we also assign the events to our page. Okay, so here it will be the second page that has the go to page 1 button click, which we assign the one that goes to the first page. Okay, so I'm going to assign this event to it. And then we have the second page go to page 3 button click, which we will assign the one that goes to page 3, which was button click 3. Okay, and at this point, let's run this application and see if we can actually move from the second page to the other pages. So let's go to page 2, let's go to page 1. Okay, that seems to work. Let's go to page 2, let's go to page 3. And you can see we can go from page 3 to page 1. All right, so that works. Now you can navigate, and you can even navigate from one page to another. And this concept is really important for you to understand, because what we're going to do is we're going to use user controls inside of user controls, inside of pages, inside of a frame in our bigger project, which is something that you would usually do. So it's not uncommon to do it this way, but the problem is that if you do it this way, so if you build your UI like this, which is, as I said, very common, you will have to send the event all the way up. So you will have to send it from the user control to the parent user control to the page to the main window. Okay, so this will be a little more complicated, but the structure or the concept will be exactly the same as we have it here. Okay, so that's it for this video. See you in the next one.